Last week we conducted our first campaign interview with Julia Gillard. Tonight it's Tony Abbott's turn. I spoke with him just a short time ago in our Sydney studio. Tony Abbott, today's Treasury figures on the economic outlook again project that the budget will return to surplus 3 years early in 2012-13. That's the end of government debt that you're banging on about. The first developed country to be out of the red and back in the black after the global economic crisis. Now, where does that leave your attack on Labor debt?
Well, there's still an enormous amount of wasteful spending, Kerry, an enormous amount of wasteful spending, and I wanted to end the waste, as you know, to pay back the debt, to stop the big new taxes and to stop the boats.
But the budget will be back in the black 3 years earlier than originally scheduled, and Australia avoided a recession.
That's if you assume, Kerry, that the government can avoid more of these spending blowouts that we've seen so many of, if they can avoid another pink bats disaster, if they can avoid another school halls rip-off program, if they can do all of that, sure, if their assumptions are right, sure, this will happen. But I don't think anyone can be confident, given the record of this government, that that'll turn out the way they say.
Do you think it's fair to acknowledge, though, that this was a very particular, unique, I think probably in Australia's history, release of cash spending to prop up the economy in a global economic crisis, that with the speed at which that money was going to be got out there, whether it was cash handouts or whether it was money being spent in a hurry, that inevitably some of it would be wasted?
I don't think you can ever justify waste, Kerry, and certainly where the Pink Bats program was concerned, the government had literally 20-odd warnings that there were all sorts of problems coming, and where the school hall program has been concerned, OK, maybe they couldn't have anticipated everything at the beginning, but they've had plenty of warnings since it started, but they haven't really adjusted it properly.
Now you, by comparison, paint yourself as a man of great fiscal discipline, as somebody who can be trusted to run a tight budget ship. Well, Peter Costello wrote this about you in his memoirs, quote, "Tony always saw himself as something of a romantic figure, a Don Quixote ready to take on lost causes and fight the great principles, never one to be held back by the financial consequences of decisions. He had grandiose plans for public expenditure." Now, has this leopard changed his spots?
Look, I had a very genial encounter with Peter the other day, and I was able to tell him that instead of channeling B.A. Santa Maria, I'm now channeling Peter Costello, and I think he was amused by that, Kerry. Look, look at my record. I was a very effective employment minister. I was a very effective health minister. As health minister, I had a $40 billion plus budget under my control. It was very effectively managed under my stewardship.
Because Peter Costello continued on that same page of his memoir, quote, "At one point when we were in government, he, Abbott, asked for funding to pay for telephone and electricity wires to be put underground through the whole of his northern Sydney electorate to improve the amenity of the neighbourhoods. He also wanted the Commonwealth to take over the building of local roads and bridges in his electorate." Well,
I'm a local member, as you'd expect, and local members sometimes make ambit claims, but
not party leaders and not prime ministers.
Well, look, again, Kerry, once you become a party leader, you have to be absolutely governed by the national interest. And I've changed, Julia Gillard's changed over the years. The absolute national interest has got to be the test of policy.
Now let's talk about immigration, which you've put further on the map in this campaign at the weekend, and where you've been accused of being tricky. Isn't it true that the peak immigration figure of 300,000 in 2008, the calendar year 2008, the first year of the Rudd government that you've described as unsustainable, was actually achieved under the immigration policy of the Howard government?
But the government that was in charge was the Rudd-Gillard government, and the following year, 2009, we had 277,000 people come in, and what I'm proposing is that the immigration intake has to be sustainable. That's why I've proposed a maximum of 170,000. And I'm being honest and upfront about this, Kerry. Julia Gillard tried to have a population discussion last week without being fair income with us. She tried to pretend that you could discuss population without also discussing immigration. She wouldn't tell us what she wanted to do with immigration, and I challenged her to specify a figure.
Well, you said last Saturday that immigration in the last year of the Howard government was actually 200,000. Was about, I think you said, 200,000.
In the last 7 quarters of the Howard government.
The last 7 quarters was 200,000.
Well, I think it was about 210,000 in the last 7 quarters of the Howard government.
Well, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, it was actually 244,000 for the calendar year in 2007 and rising, correct? And the Howard government was in office for 11 of those 12 months.
I'm not disputing your figures, Kerry, but circumstances have changed. Australia's cities are choking on their own traffic. We were booming in the Howard years. We have gone through a global financial crisis. There has been an economic slowdown since then. The public no longer support immigration the way they did